it's Kelly Timecut again. Today I'm going to talk about Donnie Darko, which I saw in late October, just before Halloween, and it's a great film to watch for Halloween. I recommend it. It starts with warning of violence, consumption of alcohol, smoking, sexual content. It's got a lot of that. It's scary, but in a psychological thriller type of way rather than slasher movie horror, which I'm less keen on. I prefer psychological dramas. The opening scene is high up in the mountains. In the distance, thunder rumbling, then the camera pans towards someone lying still in the road, and it's Donnie Darko falling off his bicycle. He wakes up, gets up, smiles, he's back on his bike and rides back home, wiping his eyes as if he'd fallen asleep. Then, as the film titles appears, it looks like a nuclear flashover. That's the ominous atmosphere. And I thought, wow, what a film I'm going to be watching. So he rides home, his family, they're having dinner. His sister, who's a couple of years older, voting age, she's planning to vote for Dukakis. It's October 1988. It's just before the presidential election where George H.W. Bush was elected. Her mention of the opposition candidate certainly got a discussion going at their family dinner table, and that amused me in a way. Hot back to when the politics was simpler, certainly compared to the 2020s when there's so many threats around. And the soundtrack, that's awesome too. The first song is The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen. Since seeing the film, I've had a look at the official music video for The Killing Moon. Then that struck me when I saw the word Bunnymen, There's lots of little connections. What happens early in the film, a giant rabbit confronts Donnie. He gets these voices in his ears. The voices are coming from Frank, who's a giant rabbit, hence Echo and the Bunnymen, that connection. He warns that the world is going to end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes and 12 seconds. Something I wondered about. What is the significance of that time? It's 1,032 hours, 40,722 minutes. It's 2,443,692 seconds. Can't see any significance in that. Those numbers add up. The 28 days plus 6 plus 42 plus 12 equals 88, and it's set in the year 1988. The presidential election that year was on the 8th of November. Later in the film, there's a flight that Donnie's sister and her mum are on. It departs at midnight from gate 42. It's flight 2806. All the numbers keep cropping up. There's also a reference to Back to the Future. The DeLorean car in that film reaches a speed of 88 miles an hour in that film. Lots of little coincidences. I found out that the sidereal lunar month is 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, 11 seconds. That's very close if you subtract one or add one to all of those figures. From DD to D-Day, you actually get that number. And there's another connection with the moon, which is the Killing Moon song. So Frank, bit of a scary looking rabbit, especially if it turns up in your room in the middle of the night, turns up outside your house, encourages you to sleepwalk and to do pretty awful things. That is difficult. The day before I saw this film, I was planning to watch it for a couple of days. I've seen on Amazon Prime, it was available on Freevee. I regularly watch Miles Dyer's live stream, and he brought out his Frank costume on his show for its Halloween theme on the Wednesday before I saw the film. Synchronicity or what? It was great watching before Halloween. The calendar matches up to this year, Thursday 27th. I just thought, wow, yeah, in the film, that's same weekdays. The film has an innovative take on time travel with semi-transparent columns, which the characters refer to as portals away into the future or back into the past, and these columns of fluid project out of the chest and seem to determine what that person's about to do. Donnie's freaking out. There's all these things, but one of the brighter things in his life is a new girl started in his class at school called Gretchen Ross. He gets talking to her. She says about how she's had to move with her mum because her father had emotional problems. He goes, "Oh, I've got emotional problems. What did he have?" Turns out, oh gosh, domestic violence related, heavy stuff. So as we get closer, we get to see a countdown every so often, how long it is until midnight at the start of Halloween, when the world is going to end. Donnie gets more panicked, and the rabbit has saved his life. Early on in the film, feels like the world's about to end. Early on, the 2nd of October, when the events first unfold, when he first hallucinates the bunny man. He wakes up on a golf course. He's been sleepwalking in the night. When he comes home, the house has been taped off. There's the police, fire brigade, emergency services. The house is significantly damaged. There's a character called Grandma Death. She stands in the middle of the road. Cars have to look out for her, weave around her. She's quite an important part of the film. There's bullies, there's teachers. A young Drew Barrymore. Amazing to see a young Jake Gyllenhaal and a young Drew Barrymore in this film. I loved it. That's their early years. That's how they got started. Quite clearly, a big part of the film. Donnie is suffering from daylight hallucinations. The film itself, released in the US a couple of months after the attacks of 11th September, so they couldn't publicise it that much. So it was mainly, I gather, pushed out by word of mouth to get its current cult following. It didn't get released in the UK until October 2002, and then one of the songs in the soundtrack became a Christmas hit in 2003, the Gary Jules version of Mad World, which is amazing. I love the Tears for Fears song as well. I mean, there's some awesome songs. One song that isn't mentioned on this that I thought would fit in, and I listened to when I thought about it after seeing this film, that's Frontier Psychiatrist by the Avalanches. That Boy Needs Therapy. You may remember that if you were old enough in 2001, you may be aware of that track. If not, look it up. The video features lots of stuff from the golden age of cinema, clips, some quite distasteful, unfair representations of mental health. One line is, "You're a nut. Crazy as a coconut," something like that. It wouldn't be as acceptable now, thankfully. I think we've made a lot of progress on mental health matters. That's something I'd like to talk about in another video. A few years back, I lost my sister. She had borderline personality disorder. The attitudes, even in the noughties, at the time of this film, certainly for a few years after, and certainly by many people who are unsympathetic. Perhaps they've never suffered themselves, so when I was young, I hit a really big mental health crisis, and the sort of things some of my so-called friends said, "You'll snap out of it," just really weren't helpful when you've got mental health crisis. You need people to talk to. There's a lot of loneliness. That's another subject. I'm aware of friends who've really suffered psychologically because of lack of human contact, meaningful face-to-face human contact, especially recently with the COVID pandemic. I'm digressing because this film was set in the late 80s. The reactions from the characters, one teacher gets dismissed for having what would probably be a more progressive attitude nowadays. There's a sort of cult going on in Middlesex, the town involved in this film. All sorts of heavy subjects get covered a little bit in this film. It's really worth a watch. I'd give it 9.5 out of 10. I loved it. It's a film that really gives a nod to that era and the attitudes. In some ways, I saw a slight similarity to the butterfly effect, but it's very different. I love the butterfly effect as well, and that covers a lot of subjects similar but in a different way. I think this is the longest film review I've done. I've got a lot of editing to do. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye. Bye for now.